6-2, review, discussion, and possible action by the council to consider closure or other options for Davis Street.
We need to table that one too, since they're not here to present their deal.
Who's that?
Yeah, it's not what I'm saying. This is a different issue.
Different issue?
Yes.
So are we on 6-1?
6-2.
Can we bypass 6-1?
Yeah, because they're not here.
I thought that's what we were talking about, that's right.
Doing their things.
Okay.
Davis Street, for those of you who haven't driven down it. It is not a street per se. It is a set of ruts that go across a lot. There's no asphalt or concrete. There are large chug holes in it. We've had some issues where people tried to pull out on the road and had near misses. The option there is to put out additional stop signs. But I was approached by the owners of Rocky Point. They were asking that we possibly close down the road because they have plans to build in that area. They've got some, and I'm not gonna go into any details, but they have some interested parties that want to put up some structures there. It would be an outstanding amenity for our city. We looked into the laws that govern that, or the rules, and if you turn in your books, same page. Turn to 6-2, consideration of closure or other options for Davis Street. You'll see a map. Comes off 259 and goes between the Rocky Point property that faces the highway and the booze station. We contacted our lawyer, Stan, and asked him, and he looked up the rules that apply. There's Transportation Code Title 6 Roadways, Subtitle 8 Municipal Streets. Chapter 311, General Provision relating to municipal streets, Subchapter A, General Authority. On Section 311.008. And you can read it, it's highlighted. Closing of street or alley by general law municipality, which we are the governing body of a general law municipality by ordinance may vacate, abandon, or close a street or alley of the municipality if a petition signed by all the owners of the real property abutting the street or alley is submitted to the governing body. The only two owners of the property along each side are the Smiths, Rocky Point Adventures, and does Sadar own that property? Chief?
Booze station.
Yeah, the booze station,
I believe so.
city authority, okay. I understand that they are both working on a plan to bring in business that area, but that street, if you wanna call it a street, needs to be closed. It gives us an opportunity, it's a street we don't maintain, we have it for many, many years. People that come out or are going to the back end of the area have other options to turn to get home or to get to Rocky Point. It really serves no purpose other than being a different cut through should someone choose to use it, but it's only a cut through, it's not a street.
questions would be, do we know how much usage, if any, that it gets? Or is it just, could you compare it to, I guess, just say an alleyway where people cut through, or, I mean, I don't know.
You can consider it an alleyway, it's a set of ruts that go up through dirt.
Yeah. I noticed that it goes all the way through to Jefferson. I just didn't know if that end of it, and I haven't been up there to look at it, because I haven't, but to see if, I mean, I don't see anybody, there's never anybody using it from the 259 side that I can see when I'm up there, because it runs right not too far away from the ice machine and all that. And you never see anybody using that in entryway and exit. If they do, it's probably very few and far between.
Is there a fence that runs down through there?
No.
No, I know that.
I know there's a lot of brush and a lot of shrubbery that goes up the side of it, but
The only time I ever use it is for the Christmas parade, when I'm trying to get to Jefferson Street after the parade's over.
I was under the understanding that the gentleman that lives at 100 Haley Street would also own conjoining property to that Davis Street. Now, looking at the map, it doesn't show that, but I would prefer to go into the appraisal district mappings and actually pull the plots on them to make sure. Because he would be the only other person other than Sadar Sharif or the owners of Rocky Point that would own property that would connect to it.
then we could pursue it and go forward. Take the petition to them, and if that's indeed the case, I know the owners of Rocky Point and Sadar want to close it off, go forward with the construction there. And we'll go to this gentleman as well, if necessary.
Right. He would be the only other property owner that
I would
want
think,
to look into. It would
Is
be
this
the
like-
owner of 100 Davis.
Yeah, he's like at the corner of Jefferson and Davis.
He's at the corner of Haley
Haley.
and Jefferson. He's maintained that property for as long as I've been here, all the way to Davis Street.
So
So
he
I've
just
always
made-
been under the understanding that he owned it.
Yeah, he just, but he maintains it.
He may not, I don't
Yeah,
know.
he just.
Looking at Google Maps, it shows that it's part of the boost station property, but I would want to go into the actual appraisal district maps to verify.
Agreed.
I have one quick question. if that's
Yes, ma'am.
okay. There are some people that use that street, my neighbors use it. I mean, it's convenient for them. If you were to close it off, would you sell it to those property owners? And have it as income for the city?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the point, and we have to, but the addendum to that agreement is that we have to maintain access to it. They can't build on top of it because we have a water line that runs through it.
Right. So have you spoken to the neighbors that do use it, or no? Or does it matter?
No, because they have other options to get to the highway, and that would be on paved streets.
I think it just irritates me a little bit that roads are just taken and given to Rocky Point. Whatever they want, they get.
That's not true.
Okay.
And I can understand you might have that perception. What we're trying to do is go forward. This is always the end game.
And I understand that, you know, if you want to sell it to get some revenue, because there are other options. But I don't want you to just give it away.
no, I wouldn't say we'd give it.
I understand that the property lines, I'm told that I understand that the property lines from both of those involved goes down the middle of the road.
Right, well, my two neighbors that use it are the Essie and Joyce, and then the Rodmans. They do use it because it's convenient for them. And so, I mean, it doesn't affect me, I don't use it. But this is the first I've heard of it, so it upset me a little bit just to hear it just now, that they probably don't know either.
Yeah, Joyce knows.
Oh, she does?
Yes, she does.
Okay. She was on it today.
Well, she was gonna speak on it tonight. She's not here, okay?
Okay.
My understanding is that area where we start the Christmas parade, where we always, where Rocky Point's using as a part of parking, they don't own that property. Sadar owns that piece of property.
Yes.
So it's Sadar's property on both sides.
Easy enough.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yes, because when I had to get permission to use that property to start the parade, I called Ginger and asked for permission, and she said, you can use it, but it's not my property. It's Sadar's property. He's just let us use it for parking.
It shows, I'm looking at Oxy Hunt, and it shows Sadar's name on both sides.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Ginger told me. She said,
So-
we've just been able to use the property for our parking, but it is Sadar's property.
Okay.
She's correct in that. He owns both sides
Both
for the
sides.
first 100 feet.
Yes, he
off
does.
Off of, Highway 259.
Yes,
But then, after about 150 feet, then the Smith's on.
the Smith's
on
on,
the
right.
Right.
And like I said, and then just beyond the boost station property right there, I thought it belonged to 100 Davis. But like I said, that map shows it like turning.
Yeah.
goes
You showed,
behind their
it
house.
belonged to who?
The gentleman that lives at 100 Davis Street,
Yeah, because like I said, I got permission from Ginger, and she said, well,
or Haley, he lives at 100 Haley Street, I'm sorry. The two-story? Yeah, the two-story.
Well, I'm showing on this
Yeah,
that
what's his name?
Jay,
David Thayer?
David what?
Thayer?
Yeah, it has his name on here.
Yeah, so I believe he owns over 2 David Street on the backside of his property, but I'm not 100% sure.
So we would need to find that out for sure.
mhm.
So what's our path forward if we decide to look at this?
The street we're going to abandon when we get the petition signed by the owners of that property, which would be Sadar in this case, and the gentleman in Haley. I was under the impression that, and I was told that the property line ran right up the middle of the road, but apparently not.
So, I just know in the past, he's always maintained that lot behind his house that would conjoin Davis Street. And, anytime it's gotten out of code, I've spoken to him and he's noticed. So I've always been under the impression that he owned that property.
Okay.
And that's David Fair.
Well, it's not, it's, so the way that reads, the governing body of general law, municipality by ordinance may vacate, abandon, or close a street or valley, the municipality petition signed by all the owners, real property, abiding the street or valley submitted to the governing body. So you can go ahead and move forward on it, get the petition signatures required.
Right. Yeah, if we want to create an ordinance to close Davis Street, anybody that has conjoining property must sign a petition stating that they're okay with the closing of that property.
Okay, so we need to create the ordinance first, go through them with it.
Well, you actually have to have the petition created first before you can move forward with the ordinance.
Okay. And the completion of the writing of the ordinance, and we close the street.
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna make a comment here. Anytime I'm thinking about doing anything that's in the city that brings in cash flow, albeit whether it's businesses in the city proper or manufacturing firms that we're talking to, dealing with US Steel property, I'll back up for a minute. Years ago, when there were 5,500 people at Lone Star Steel, and you had 23 trucking firms, and there were 27 inspection firms, I've seen that many at T&N at one time. You had a pretty substantial tax base, and there was residual money coming to us as a result of those activities. When Lone Star Steel went from 5,600 people or 6,000 people down to 1,400, and the inspection companies left, and the trucking firms began to dwindle out, the tax base in this county collapsed. And I understand people's frustration with the streets. I drive on them too. We all do. We went for years here and nothing was done about infrastructure. Lift stations, water lines, sewer lines. And they began to decay over time. They were issues, and we took some pretty drastic measures to correct that. But until we build back on businesses in the area, this county's never gonna be as viable as it once was. I'm not trying to reinvent Lone Star into Dallas or Houston or anything else. I'm just trying to get back to a point where we have adequate cash flow to deal with issues like streets and other things that our citizens want, and we can't do it if we're not willing to consider change occasionally. And that may mean that we shut roads for the benefit of bringing in businesses. And I'm not talking about, I don't have a grand scale plan to shut a number of roads, but I'm just looking at this one, drove up to it, and didn't see the value in keeping it open. As things stand now, we're not going to pave it. We have enough issues with city streets that we're trying to patch all the time. We do not have it within our budget to completely cover the streets. I've heard it said in several meetings that then you hear a number of people talk about ideas that they'd love to see. The most expansive ideas I heard were streets widened and sidewalks and lamps. So it's just to look at the baseline of what that entails. We ran cost on it. We only have 14 miles of road, but albeit if that were the case, if you went that expensive, you'd be looking at $75 million. We're not gonna generate that kind of cash flow. We defaulted back to 3 inches of additional asphalt on top of the streets as a minimum. There wouldn't be an additional widening, any other structures produced. That was $3.5 million. It doesn't do you any good to put asphalt on the street if you're constantly tearing up lines that are 12 feet down to replace them. We had to replace infrastructure first. We had sewage overruns that have been corrected. We had citizens complaining about dirty water that was staining their clothes. That's been corrected. We'll always continually move forward. But until we rebuild this area, and it's gonna be true for Dangerfield, Naples, Omaha, or county roads, until we rebuild this area and create tax base requirement to do so, we're not gonna complete what we want to do in bringing this place back to life the way it once was. So, if part of that is shutting down dirt ruts, if a road really doesn't even exist, then I think it's a good consideration to make. But we're not gonna sit here and not be a little bit aggressive in getting things done. And we sit here on this council and we don't represent a few, we represent 1,550 people that are asking us to do our best to enhance the amenities that they have. I don't know any other way to do it but to be aggressive.
With that being said, I make a motion that we create an ordinance to consider the closure of Davis Street.
And we'll go with the petition to the adjoining landowners.
Right.
I'll second it.
Do you contact Morris County first to verify this
Yes.
location?
Yes.
That needs to be done.
We'll run that background check on it. But in the meantime, we can start moving forward. Okay, I have a first and a second. Everyone in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Six dash 3, review, discussion, possible action by the council to reevaluate EDC and council members to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
I put this back on the agenda because we discussed the non-disclosure agreement. I spoke with a lawyer about this to see the pros and the cons of one and the reasons why we were talking about pursuing one. In any of the meetings that we have in open session, they are open to where anything that's discussed is for public knowledge. It can be utilized by the public, anybody that wants to participate, it's all public. The only thing that he said that would even consider a non-disclosure agreement would be in the closed sessions and stuff. And he says for us to have closed sessions, it is a privilege for us to have the closed sessions to discuss things such as personnel matters. And when you're in those meetings, it is an understanding that anything that is discussed in those closed session meetings is not to be discussed outside that because of it being a confidential closed session meeting. So therefore, he suggested us not to pursue the non-disclosure because it would mean that we would be basically signing agreement against our own peers as far as council people, aldermen, etc. So that is the reason why I put this back on the agenda, because the last meeting, the discussion we had made reference to it to pursue it. I wanted that to be brought up that we should not pursue it, or I'm assuming that we should not assume it if that's what y'all want to do. But that was under the guidance of the lawyer that we wouldn't necessarily need to do that basically an open meeting because it is open to public, but it would be specifically for a closed meeting in which that is to be understood to be confidential and not to be discussed anyway. So that would mean that if there was something that needed to be reiterated with our council members to not discuss things from the closed session, that would be something that the mayor would need to do, but he did not, he suggested it's not necessary to do.
We all know that we don't disclose things talked about in an executive session. And it's by and large a gentleman's agreement, or ladies' agreement that we not. My personal feelings, I don't have strong feelings on it one way or the other. I've signed many non-disclosure agreements on issues that I had to work on back in my career, and it was just part of the protocol. But I don't. If you want to do it, fine. If not, I don't have an exception to it one way or the other. It's if you have different feelings, please state your preference.
excuse me, I don't have an issue with what Tina's and the lawyer said. I just need to make myself clear to everybody that I think that sometimes, not just in this meeting, but sometimes in meetings, that the appearance is given that an hour after the meeting, 25 people are calling somebody and saying this, and this. So, and I agree with Randy. We're all adults and we all know what's going on. We just need to remember that there are certain things that are discussed in closed session. And when that happens, until we decide to put it on the public record and take action with it, that it needs to stay that way. You know, some of that has to do with EDC stuff as well as city council stuff, because if we're trying to negotiate something with a business before we get ready to propose it, that doesn't need to be talked on the streets before we get all the i's dotted and the t's crossed and get ready to bring it before the council or bring it before the citizens. So I agree with what's being said. We don't have to have it, but I think it was good for us to discuss it, just so everybody is on the same page.
So, what would be the council's pleasure on this?
If we don't, if it's not necessary that we sign it, then I think we just need to stay the way we are.
Okay. We're first and second to maintain our present practice. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? We will maintain the present protocol. Review, discussion, possible action by the council, and this is 6.4, to appoint election judges the upcoming May 7th, 2022 general election. Ken, you want to comment on this? You've been spending a lot amount of time on it.
As y'all know, we have to have our judges identified and within a certain time period, and we've had challenges because the people who have had the experience in the past are no longer here or unavailable. So we've contacted several people, and we've had Ginger Smith said that she would help us as far as on being the election judge, and we've got an Amron McGill, she would be the alternate. And then I have another lady that's discussed that she will be one of our clerks to help with us and stuff. Her name is not on this because it's specifically for the election judge and the alternate, but that's Miss East that's helped us before with the recount, and she said that she would help to be our clerk type person. So I'll just need you guys for us to vote this in, and then, or to discuss it and vote it, and then if we do agree upon those two people as judges and alternate judge, then we'll need to sign the paperwork before we leave out.
It's something that we need to move on quickly. We're running out of time. I did contact someone today who is interested in being the election judge. That was the last vacancy that we had. Upon further contact with him, we'll write an agreement as well and sign off on the document.
It's my understanding too, everybody this year is having problems with election judges because they're having so many activities going on the same day in so many different areas, and so we're not the only one that's struggling. So I've been talking to Morris County, been talking to the Secretary of State, and as far as on some additional training to see if we can't reach out and get more people from each community and each town involved, because this is, this is for our benefit, for the city to have more than one person capable of doing it.
Was Ginger still gonna be the early voting ballot, board judge and election judge?
It's a combined title type thing.
And then Amron McGill, she's the alternate.
Mhm.
This is something we need to lock in. We have made a number of calls to different people, inquiring if they had time or would be willing to do so, and it's been quite an intensive journey to find people who would take these positions. It's not like you have a lot of options. And they're all very capable people.
I'll make a motion, we accept Ginger Smith as election judge and Amron McGill as alternative judge for a one-year period beginning April 1.
Not second.
First and second, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Passes. 6-5. Review, discussion, and possible action by the council to consider the sale of surplus items to include a 35-foot to 8-foot gooseneck flatbed trailer and a mill or welding machine, big tex trailer combination package. These are part of the amenities that we received from U.S. Steel when we went to visit them. And these tables, an inordinate amount of office equipment, firefighting equipment was donated. We've got an additional trailer. We don't use these. There's, albeit that we don't, they're just sitting there. We decided that perhaps the most prudent thing to do would be to liquidate them. Estimated income from the welder that we've got, that they donated, will probably sell for $8,000. The gooseneck trailer, I think, is a 25,000 pound capacity trailer, double axle. And I'm having a hard time recalling what we were going to, 5? Okay. And of course, these would go out for bid, and we have to receive X number of bids, and then you determine if you want to accept.
How did we determine the value to add for those?
The welder has been researched and has we've talked to a business in Longview about it. To buy a new welder, that is, if it's running, to buy a new welder of that size, just the welder alone is gonna cost you $12,000 to $13,000. That welder, based on the serial number, is a 2010 model. It has minimal hours, I can't remember, it's like 700 or 800 hours on it. If everything is working on it, and it runs and stuff, we were told that it would easily bring between 6 and 7, maybe 8,000. The fact of not knowing all details about it, and the fact that it's with a package deal with the trailer, the little trailer alone is a special made welder trailer. You're gonna go and pay between $1,200 and $2,000 for one of them. So with what we were told, as far as on like the welder itself and the trailer, we kind of went down the middle in an approximate value at 65.
You might consider that a minimum bid.
I'm sorry?
You could consider it a minimum bid.
Do we know if the welder actually runs, or?
We're gonna have to check it out. I know that albeit that it was one time an asset owned by U.S. Steel, and understanding the procedures they have and how tight they were, it would have been under a very stringent maintenance program. But it hasn't been running some time, so we're gonna have to go in and look at that. I wouldn't expect to see any problems, but you never know till we get into it.
It being the size that it is, it was even suggested of maybe contacting people like either up here at A&E or even over at Delta or Mill Services. These are that size of that welder being equipped like it is. It's got its leads, it's got the oxygen and acetylene lines and stuff like that. If everything checks out, I mean, it'd be a good welder for somebody based upon what we were told, because it's not very many hours. But, you know, looking at it where it's at, it looks, exterior-wise, it looks good. But components and stuff, engine-wise, you know, we don't know. That's why we want to try to check it out. If we could spend just a little bit on it and get an idea of what it would cost to look at it, we could spend a little bit off of it, and, I mean, you got some potential to get a good return on it.
The supply chains being what they are and equipment being in short supply as it is, this would be a prime time to sell it.
As far as on the trailer, Shane and I talked about it. He researched and talked around with some different people. It's the same thing. It's a 30-foot trailer, 25,000-pound capacity. We've seen them, you know, we pulled it up online. There's some, not knowing all the capacity of all of them that we looked at, $7,000 to $8,000. But again, it's, you know, you've got to find the right person that wants it. Looking at it through the picture, and I didn't get the pictures until today, so I didn't get them printed out for you guys, but they will be posted if we decide to pursue this. But it looks to be in pretty good shape. But if you, with your trucking background, if you disagree with them, that this would be the time, you know, because we're going based on what we could find online and stuff.
That sounds reasonable on the trailer and, you know, the welding trailer and the deal on that. I mean, I don't think it'd be a problem. Depends on who wants it, you know.
Right.
But I would suggest let's go ahead and get welding checked out and put it out for bids along with the other trailer.
Is that in, is that
You're making the
Yeah, that's
motion?
my motion.
And I'll second it.
You have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Mayor, I would ask one thing, we may have already done this, but in the future, if we have anything that we're selling and we call to get valuation on it, as far as what it could be sold for, and we may already be doing this, I don't know, I'm just throwing this out there. I'd like to see it documented, be given to us as far as, this is what we've checked out as far as what it's worth. And maybe, and Tina said she didn't have time for the pictures, maybe in the future we can, one of us or somebody can help get pictures of those items.
Well, I just got the pictures today
I know.
on the trailer.
Yeah.
Shane thought he had sent me some, and I looked, and I had not gotten them. So
But that would be the only thing I would ask, is that, you know, for future consideration,
Well,
so we
more
can see what
comprehensive
we're
package.
talking about. Not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with this, but,
Well, if you go out to get someone to come in to
Yeah.
give you a valuation, you're gonna have to pay for it.
oh, I understand.
So,
But
what we were trying to utilize was what we saw, no differently than like if you're gonna go buy something for yourself personally, we were going out through Craigslist,
Yeah.
through whatever, you know, trailer,
That's fine,
you
I don't
know.
have a problem with that, but I mean, you can print that out too, so.
I talked to Blackwell over there in Dangerfield, kind of get an idea
Yeah.
on the trailer, is that a bad price, or is it too low, too high? And he said, no, if it's what you say it is, it'd be about a good price.
I just kinda like a cover ourselves to have the documentation
I
to
understand.
back it up, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, I would agree.
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. We will proceed then. 6-6, review discussion, possible action by the council to consider increasing municipal court proceedings from once a month to twice a month to accommodate increased cases.
Okay, when this was originally discussed, it was discussed that we have it once or twice a month. It was voted on at the time to do it once a month because we were through the transition stuff. We had to have a special court date because of an incident that happened that had to have a special court date called. And if we did that, we would have about 60 items on the docket that would not be able to be addressed until next month. Due to court proceedings and everything, you have to have turnaround times. You either have to extend deadlines and things of that type, or you have to get it turned around. So we have had quite a bit of activity, and the judge has had to come up here quite often and has had to do some things on her own time, to where if we could increase the time period up to twice a month, I think she could do it within those established times, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but I think that would accommodate her and our schedule and our docket a little bit more. I checked this afternoon before I come over here. We've got some items on the dock. I think we've got almost 60 items, or 60 individuals, and some of those individuals have multiple items on their records that are needing to be addressed. You know, and to do that, we got to be able to have court again this month if possible.
Even with that, you're still expenditures of half of what they were before. And the judge is in agreement to that she would work through that.
I make a motion that we increase the judge to twice a month.
So,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. I'm now gonna call us into executive session. It's 6:54. As provided under section 551.074 of the Texas Open Meetings Act, City Council is now going to retire to a closed session at 6:54 p.m. in order to establish date for the associate municipal judge. We return to open session after closed session deliberations are concluded. Excuse us, please.